fire escape was at Minneota High School, and they had an outside tunnel to go through a big tube that you'd float down to get down to the bottom floor. And the guys liked to go up first when they were called because the little girls never wore slacks back in high school in the 40s. They all wore a skirt. And if you got them to slide down that tunnel in there, when you were watching from the outside as they came down, you could see their legs. And that was kind of nice. But the Warren Plumber was another story that developed over the years that I told it at quite some length. And his wife wanted me to show it to her husband. And
See, Dad,
so
can
I
we,
went
can
on
we jump
and
in?
everything talking to Warren about here's the features of the Kirby. And you'd show him that we had the how he could move this and clean that. Then it could be a straight suction, you could use it for that, or it would have rotating and you can clean with that. Oh, lots of different things. And anyway, he said that he didn't really care for the vacuum cleaner, but he said he'd like to talk with me, and I told him that I'd meet him the next day. And his office was at the McKnight building in Minneapolis. General Mills owned this store building. And that we had their flour and their cereals, and they had a feed called Laro. And he said, I'd like to hire you to sell this Laro feed to the farmers. And that's how I got started. And then they sold out to Land O'Lakes. You've heard of Land O'Lakes, you know, butter, and they're big co-op. And I worked for that for a while, but then I went into it with the Laro Feed Division and sold it on that basis. If you sold 6 in a month, the 60 vacuum cleaner that you'd get would yours free to sell for what you wanted to sell it at. Now we'd sell it normally over $300. What do you pay for one now today, a vacuum cleaner?
Ranges
Kirby's a
from
lot more.
$80 to
$1,000.
$1,000?
I don't know.
I don't
I
know
don't
either.
look
But
at
anyway, that's how I got started going door to door. I know then I got an appendix operation and I was in the hospital for a while. Those years they kept you in there after your appendix. It wasn't a very serious operation, but you'd have to stay for at least 3 or 4 nights. And the nurse that worked in that hospital happened to be your mother at St. Mary's, and I was in there. And I took a liking to her, and then she fussed around in the room there and one thing or another, and I flirted with her. And actually, I proposed to her on the 4th night in the hospital. That's pretty fast.
What did she say on that proposal?
But I said I made up my mind. I've been dogging and catting around for about 5 years, and I'm really a family man at heart. I remember she repeated that a few times to me. Family man at heart, and you sure would do. And anyway, we married, and here's the first generation coming up from that.
How did you get her phone number?
Oh, she wouldn't give it to me. But one of the nuns forgot her name, and I told her in confidence. She came into my room, and I told her that I'd like to send Josephine a card or some flowers or something, and thank her for all the work she's done here as my nurse in the hospital. But she won't give me her phone number. Oh, I'll get it for you, she said. I'll get it for you. And she did. And that was one thing that Josie wanted to know, how did you ever get my phone number? I never gave you my name or anything like that. But I tricked her a little bit and get the phone number. And then we started going together. Where we would go to, Friday night was the Blue Moon Dance Hall in Marshall had a dance every Friday night, the Blue Moon. Well, Henry was a neighbor of ours on Jefferson Street in Minneota, and it was St. Edward's Parish was the church. And Henry would had a pew ahead of us. We were 22 and his pew number was 24. And anyway, anybody that was crowded, you'd all have to crawl over Henry. He'd never move over. He'd always be on the end of that end. That was just his place to sit. And I told Donnie DeRoe he was an usher. And Donnie was a Sunday Mass, and I was coming kind of late. And he said, the place is just about full, but there is a place to sit next to Henry Martin, but you'll never move him over. And I said, I'll bet you 50 cents I'll move him over. This was in the back of the church in the pew, and where the ushers were. And so he said, that's a deal. And I give my 50 cents to another guy. He gave his 50 cents. Down I went down to the, and I genuflected, and it happened to be right a pew in front of Mother and Dad. And but I made that bet that I was, and I made a genuflection, and he was like this, and I got my leg in there, and the other side, and I was still in the aisle praying like this. People were starting to giggle and laugh, and I was moving his leg over, and he was pointing this way, and I got a little closer, and the whole pew, the whole church was looking at me. It was down near the front. Mass hadn't started yet. And I got in there and I started to pray, and he kept talking to get me over, and he never did. And then he got so mad that we argued right then and there. And then Mother saw this, and oh my, she would go to daily Mass, Mom would, when she was able. And she told Dad that, now Dad, you talk to Lawrence in the piano room and you tell him that was wrong for him to make such a scene in the church. And so Pa said, yes, I'll do that. Piano room, and Mother had the piano in there, and the boys and my sister all had to learn to play the piano. And I didn't do too good on the piano, but I tried. Oh yeah, but that was a room where you had to lay down on the floor, and Pa he was pretty old. He'd lay down. I mean, you lay down like this, and then he'd spank you on the hind end for what the naughtiness that you had done. Did I ever spank any of you guys? No. No, I don't think I did I? Huh.
Yeah.
I might have taken you into a room and talk, but I don't know whether I had to lay down and spank you. Francis worked at Dean Furniture Store. All had, mostly, the little towns had sold coffins for the burial. And this was at Minneota, and Francis worked for Dean's, and they sold coffins. And one day I walked in to see where Francis to visit him, and it was always he'd be in the back, and it'd be dark back there. And then I have to walk past all those coffins, and I've been thinking about that, walking down there, 10 years old. And one time I came to get Francis for the message from Mom or somebody, and as I came down the aisle, all of a sudden, the coffin roof opened, and a guy in a white sheet was a ghost, came forward and went, ooh, ooh. I turned around and I ran out that back door. Oh, I was never so scared in my life. It was a ghost. There's a ghost in there, And there was Francis riding in the coffin, and he raised up like that when he saw. He was 6 years older than I was, and pulled that trick on me. I would go door to door for 3 years. I sold Kirby vacuum cleaners, door to door. And that's where you'd get your leads. And you'd have to fool them into thinking that there was just a big something that they could win. And your pitch was usually, the first thing you gotta say is, you'd like something like that, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? And then when you get that head shaking like that, then you knew that you had them. And we'd have morning meetings every morning. We'd have a meeting before we'd go out to knock on the doors. And we'd stand in them, she'll be coming with the Kirby when she come, when she come. We'll be coming with the Kirby when she come, when she come. And you imagine about maybe 6, 8 guys all singing this song. Then the doors would open, and then out you'd go and jump in your car, and you'd have your block slide out for you to knock on doors. Halloween night, and we'd go out and we did different tricks. And one of them was that was a favorite was tip the outhouses of some of the houses over. Everybody didn't have electricity or didn't have facilities for the toilets. They had an outhouse in the back of the roof, back of their house. And some of the restless guys there that were kind of devils in a way. They'd get a gang together, 4 or 5 of them, and they'd hide, and then they'd run out there on Halloween night and tip the outhouse over. This one night, I joined the group, and it was Halloween, and I forget where that was exactly on Minnesota, and we hid, and then we all ran at once, and in the meantime, that farmer knew we were coming, and he moved ahead of it in the dark. He moved his outhouse ahead a ways, or behind. And when we came running, lo and behold, as fast as we could go, we went right in the ditch where the outhouse was over, and all that and what an experience I had trying to explain to my mother how I got so dirty. I was in a baseball game. I played for the town team for Minnesota. I was second baseman. And I could run pretty fast. And we were playing against Porter at Canby, Minnesota. And I was on the town team, played second base. And I dragged a bunt down first baseline. And I was going to try and beat it out, but the ball went pretty slow, and the first baseman weighed 230 pounds. His name was Popowski, and I weighed about 130. And I come flying down that first base, and he had the ball already in his hand. And well, there he is, I'll have to bowl him over. And I ran right in him. And he had his legs out behind me. Side bone hit this by his, and I went flying through the air, somersaulting. They could hear the crack of the bone. You can still feel it up in the stands. The femur bone broke right off, went about 4 inches up this way, up into my hip. And I'll never forget how and they took the whole one was in pain laying out there, and the hot day in the sun waiting for an ambulance. And then when it came, and then when they were setting it, the nurse and another guy had my leg on my back. I was on the back on the table, and my legs were up, and they had to pull that leg hard enough to get that femur bone back in there, you know. And yeah, well, you got something for the pain, but it hurt. Oh God, it hurt. And they were pulling and pulling, and just about had it. And I said, Doc, look. And when he looked, oh, he had the foot pointing down and was walking the wrong way. Oh, he said, good thing we caught that, or we'd never know if you were coming or going. Well, I didn't laugh anyway. Then they had to turn that thing all the way around again. And I laid in there for 4 months in a body cast, from here down over and across over there, flat on my back. For it to heal, that's the only way it would heal would be through time. And then I got crutches after that, but Mother and Dad had gone that Sunday to visit Sister Rose. She was to become a nun. She was in the nunnery in St. Paul, the novitiate they called it. And so when they came home that afternoon, I didn't go to visit because I was in the hospital actually at the from the ball game. Tied up the ball game for about 2 hours. And when Pa came in to see Mother and Dad, Bernard brought him into the hospital that night then, and they'd been told all about the accident out in the ball field. And the first thing that Pa said to me was, and he got down where I'd hear it good, I'm laying there, and he bent over, and I worked for my dad in the stockyard, and he says, what the hell did you run into him for anyway? That was the sympathy I got from Pa. Yeah, and then I had crutches and that was in a cast, and you can still feel it where the bone, where is it? No, that ain't the one there. But when that healed, then all that calcium healed around the femur bone, about that thick around there, and that'll still there, of course. And it has a liquor store on one side of the road and a big grain elevator on the other. And I happened to be visiting this grain elevator, and I knew the operator that was the head of the grain. But it was a slow day, and he was cleaning his window, which would be way up on top where the office was. So he had a long ladder, and he climbed up this ladder, and he was cleaning the window. And then I was across the street observing. So I said, I forgot his name now, but we just call him John. So I wrote, picked up the phone, and I rang the phone, one of those kind that you drink, and it rang it for John. So John had to come all the way down that ladder, he heard it, run up the green out, up the elevator driveway, and into his office. Took about a minute or two, and I was observing when he'd get to the phone, I'd hang up. Well, then he missed his call. So then he had to go out of there and go all the way around again, up the ladder, started cleaning his window, and when you get to the top, then I was across the street, then I'd ring him again. I did this twice, and on the third one, where he went back up on his ladder, he came down that ladder, and he had that pail he was washing the windows with, and he came right across the road and head to the liquor store where I was, and I thought, oh, I gotta get out of here. So I ran to the back, and the door was locked, but he had that pail of soapy water, and they got it right all over me.
Okay,
Are
go
you
ahead.
all there?
Yeah.
Lead us to that one.
1 and a 2 and a 3. Hail, hail, the gang's all here. What the heck do we care? Just we get our shot. Hail, hail, the gang's all here. What the heck do we care now?